Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute, alternative
that
facts?
Kellyanne Conway's interesting 2017 defense of then press secretary Sean Spicer, who had lied about the size of the crowds at Donald Trump's inauguration ceremony, was to signal the beginning of an era of frequent criticism of the mainstream media. Since then, we've heard extensive discussion of the topic, with phrases like fake news and alternative facts being thrown around with great frequency. The resulting lack of trust in the media has had some unfortunate results, with people seeking non-mainstream news outlets being misled into, for example, consuming fish tank cleaner in the hope of becoming immune to COVID-19. For younger people like myself, this might seem pretty novel. However, if you're of a certain age, you might be getting a sense of déjà vu, because all of this has happened before, but from the other side of the political spectrum. The 1960s was a turbulent period of great change. Civil rights were being fought for, the Cold War was at its height, and the Vietnam War was raging ever onwards. The so-called above-ground press of the time, however, generally perceived the world through a lens that the average civil rights protester or anti-Vietnam War demonstrator absolutely rejected, so they turned to the underground press instead. The underground press, largely produced by university students, seriously worried one member of the Texas House of Representatives, Joe Paul, who said, "These smut sheets are today's Molotov cocktails, thrown at respectability and decency in our nation," and claimed that the purpose of these newspapers will be to slander and libel everyone who opposes these traitors and their attempts to destroy the American government. There are many copies of newspapers from the underground press of the 60s and 70s available on JSTOR's digital archive, which I've linked down below. Going through them, it's obvious that the underground press did report and advocate for subversive action, such as in this 1974 report from the underground newspaper New Left Notes, which noted the shouting down of Edward Bamfield, a government advisor of urban affairs, who had planned to give 2 lectures on his beliefs that black folk and working class people were simply inferior. Today, we would call this cancel culture, but as this newspaper shows, it has a much longer history than the term itself. When it comes to political protest, the underground presses produce some of the best sources we have of the period, often correcting the misleading impressions given of events by the mainstream news. For example, in this article on the police breaking up a protest in Ann Arbor in 1969, where they note that despite the establishment newspapers insisting that the police violence was worse than the 1967 Detroit riots, the main difference was not in the death toll involved, but rather that the people being beaten were white rather than black. However, as this article blaming the mainstream media for introducing a streaking craze shows, the quality of material from the underground press could be mixed due to the ad hoc nature of the publications involved. One of the most interesting examples of this was the 1967 banana hoax. In June 1967, Sarah Davidson, a journalist, visited New York City to report on a 3-day cosmic love-in that was taking place in Central Park. While she was there, she saw a young hippie in a wizard hat selling bananas for 10 cents each, and banana peels for 3 cents. The reason for this was the belief that smoking banana peel could get you high. In the 17th of March 1967 issue of the Barclay Barb, an article called "Pick Your Load, Banana or Toad" commented, "The banana is for real. The peel contains arterenol, a sympathogenic agent that is also found in the human body, in the adrenal medulla, where it affects a balance control factor on the central nervous system and ultimately the heart." It then added the advice that if you go on the banana trip, you might have the antidote atropine sulfate available. Various publishers of underground papers published their own articles on the potential of banana skins to make you high, including recipes that involve freezing the peels, blending them into a pulp, baking them, and then smoking them in a cigarette or pipe, a process which many would follow in the hopes of an inexpensive high. This, of course, didn't work, but that stopped precisely nobody. One of the most visible moments of the banana peel craze happened on the 13th of April when over 10,000 people attended New York's first Be-In. It was a surreal moment which involved poetry reading, picnics, kite flying, kissing, embracing, and 2 police officers being charged by 1,000 people chanting "Love, love, love." Apparently they released the safety catches of their guns, but amiably held their fire. Amongst this huge event could be found the banana deity, which paraded along with its followers. They waved Chiquita banana stickers, gave the banana pledge, "One nation under banana with liberty and justice for all," and gave the banana salute, one middle finger up and bent. The idea that bananas could make you high spread surprisingly far, as even the above-ground press reported it. One enterprising 26-year-old, Larry Starrin, even set up a company that sought to ship banana skins across the world for people wishing to get high, and even the authorities began to believe in the hallucinogenic power of the banana, with one Donald Arthur Snell being charged with driving under the influence of drugs in May 1967, the drug in question being banana peel. Although not everyone was as credulous as that. One congressman, writing in the Vidette, who may or may not have been Democratic Congressman Frank Thompson, commented that, "Unfortunately, many people have not yet sensed the seriousness of this hallucinogenic trip-taking. Bananas may help explain the trance-like quality of much of the 90th Congress proceedings. Just yesterday I saw on the luncheon menu of the Capitol dining room a breast of chicken Waikiki entree topped with, of all things, fried bananas." This all culminated on the 26th of May 1967, when the FDA issued a press release announcing that, try as they might, their scientists had failed to produce detectable quantities of known hallucinogenics using banana peel. One of their investigators later said, "We took 30 pounds of bananas into the lab, cooked, scraped, and did everything else to them that the underground papers told us to do, but it was a put-on." It took another few months for the hoax to come to an end, but eventually people began hanging up their banana peel and moving on to other, more effective methods of getting high. While this whole chapter is surreal, it serves to put our current era of fake news and alternative news into context, showing us both the potential pros and cons of alternative news outlets. And if nothing else, it shows us once again what insane things people can be convinced to put into their mouths. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, throw us a like or leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and if you want to see future content, remember to subscribe. I'll see you next time.